Hi, I'm Ron Bonjean, and welcome back to the ROKK Rundown. Today we have a very special guest with us. We have Eleanor Hawkins, who writes the Axios newsletter, which everybody reads in Washington.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And you can use that on your LinkedIn page,
I
too.
will. Everyone in Washington reads Axios Communicators.
Yes, for sure. So there are so many things we could ask you about because you cover the industry writ large. You're covering it from Washington, New York, Silicon Valley, everywhere. What we're seeing in Washington, at least, is some of the blurring between corporate communications and public affairs. Can you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, that's something that I've been seeing too. I really look at communications and public affairs as one and the same at this point. And what I've noticed in my reporting is that corporate affairs is starting to become structured around audience. There is an audience that is incredibly important here in Washington. And what we say all the time is kind of all roads are leading back to Washington at this moment. And so what I'm seeing is that comms teams are being formed around audience here in DC, which is public affairs, government relations. We're seeing audiences that are focused around the product, right? So traditional consumer PR, product PR. There's the corp comms aspect, telling the company narrative, whether that's to investors or internal comms, telling the company narrative to employees or potential employees. And all of those kind of ladder up into corporate affairs. But the daylight between what's said here in Washington versus what's said, to your employees is pretty much gone. And so more and more you have to align around kind of one message that you can take back to employees and say, here's how we're engaging in Washington and here's why it's good for the business. You can take that same thing to investors or to consumers. And so the idea that everybody can kind of operate in silos is totally gone. And I think that has a lot to do with just the lay of the land right now, but also the information landscape that we're all trying to navigate.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. This week, Axios is hosting an AI Summit.
Yes.
And you guys have been tracking that and keeping us really informed. What should communicators be thinking about regarding AI and how they're utilizing it in their daily practices?
Well, obviously, AI is going to change the way that we all work. But one of the things that I'm tracking kind of points back to what we were just talking about, which is the information landscape and audiences. And as a communicator, it is your job to get the right information in front of the right audience to help drive your business forward. AI and LLMs are becoming one of those audiences. I sometimes joke that AI is another stakeholder that you have to think through. And a lot of that has to do with how people are discovering news and information. For example, we're seeing more and more retail investors, young retail investors, go to LLMs like ChatGPT and ask for investing advice. So if you oversee an IR page for a company, you want to optimize that for these LLMs, for these chatbots. The same could be said for young Hill staffers or regulators, lawmakers. They're increasingly going to these chatbots, these LLMs for information. So making sure that the chatbots are kind of regurgitating the right information is important. And so comms teams should start thinking about how they optimize their content, not just for LinkedIn, not just for social media, not just for SEO, but also for these chatbots.
That makes so much sense. We could ask a bazillion questions, but thank you for covering those too. We really appreciate it. And tune in next week. We'll be back. And that's it for the ROKK Rundown. Thanks very much.